Okay, here we have another video today, and last time you might recall in one or two videos ago, I tried to Bruno over here, my assistant, was supposed to supply some details. Unfortunately, he at the last minute decided not to cooperate because he felt he wasn't being paid enough. But we've worked something out. So today, Bruno is going to tell you the facts about an unusual or kind of lesser known form of fat called Omega-7, which is represented by a particular fatty acid called palmitoleic acid. Palmitoleic acid. Palmitoleic acid, I should say. It's a little hard to pronounce. Palmitoleic acid. Okay, Bruno, take it away. Go ahead. Bruno, go ahead. Tell him. What is it? What kind of fat is it? Go ahead, tell him, Bruno. Bruno, come on. Look into the camera. Bruno, here. Go ahead. Oh, he doesn't want to talk again. All right. It looks like I'm going to have to do the video. Anyway, palmitoleic acid, it's an omega-7. You probably heard of the other omega fats. Omega-3 fatty acids, typically found in fatty fish and fish oil. The three types of omega-3 fatty acids are alpha-linoleic acid, or ALA, found in flax oil and nuts and seeds and various other sources. And then you have the actual preformed omega-3 fatty acids, which is EPA and DHA, and that exists in, again, fatty fish and fish oil supplements. Then you have omega-6 fatty acids, which is represented by linoleic and linoleic acid. That's found in vegetable oils mainly, and also nuts. And then there's omega-9 fatty acids. That's represented by a fatty acid called oleic acid, which is found in extra virgin olive oil. And that imparts much of the benefits of extra virgin olive oil, besides the very unique polyphenol compounds in extra virgin olive oil. Maybe I'll do a video on extra virgin olive oil because it's a very unique substance. But today I'm going to talk about still another type of fat. Again, palmitoleic acid, or PA. This is omega-7, and not too many people are familiar with that. Similarly to the omega-9 oleic acid, it's a monounsaturated fatty acid. And good food sources include macadamia nuts, macadamia oil, and sea buckthorn oil. Now, they sell sea buckthorn supplements as a source of this omega-3 fat, PA, palmitoleic acid. They sell it, but the problem with that is sea buckthorn also contains a saturated fatty acid called palmitic acid, which is not really great to consume a lot of. Among other interesting things about palmitic acid is that when you eat an excess amount of carbohydrates, the first fat that the excess carbs are converted into is palmitic acid. So you don't really want to go out of your way to consume that stuff. Palmitic acid can be made in the body through the actions of actually through what they call the desaturation, which involves an enzyme removal of a saturated. I don't want to get into the biochemistry, but the enzyme that does this is called SCD1, and that's significant. That's a significant effect we'll discuss later. The significant amount of PA exists. A significant amount of palmitoleic acid exists in fatty tissue, where it contributes 5% of the total fatty acids found in fat tissue. It can also circulate in the blood complex with lipoproteins. Any kind of fat, most fats don't circulate freely in the blood. They have to be complex with protein carriers. Typically, you have, for example, low-density lipoprotein is your main transporter of saturated fat throughout the body. The low-density lipoprotein will transport saturated fat to, let's say, the Leydig cells of the testes, where the saturated fat is then converted in a series of enzymatic steps into a hormone we know as testosterone. So, saturated fat actually does some good things in the body. But anyway, like I say, most fats are complex with these lipoproteins, and palmitoleic acid usually circulates with the LDL or other protein carriers in the blood. But some of the Some of it is free. Some of it is free, and it also is a component of cellular membranes. Your cellular membranes are also largely composed of fat, including cholesterol. And you know, one of the reasons why fish oil works so well is it alters let's say the balance of fats in the cellular membrane. It makes the cellular membrane more fluid, so that the hormone receptors that work inside the cellular membrane can interact more smoothly with hormones. And this is one of the reasons why fish oil is so good to you. The harder the cellular membrane is, the less healthy you are. So stuff like palmitoleic acid and the omega-3 fatty acids, which will help maintain, let's say, fluidity of cellular membranes, are very good for you. Now, palmitoleic acid is also released by fat cells, and it acts as a lipokine or signaling factor. Rat studies show that it can enhance whole body glucose disposal. It can also attenuate fatty liver in mice fed high-fat diets. Now, you'll probably notice I keep talking about mice, and the truth of the matter is, this is one problem with palmitoleic acid. The majority of studies, by far, showing the benefits, and these benefits, as you'll see, are quite impressive, related to palmitoleic acid, involved almost all of them are animal studies. And as I've said in prior videos, not all animal studies are transferable to human physiology. In fact, less than half of them are. So some of the things that occur in rodents and other lab animals, however impressive they are, may not transfer over to humans. So keep that in mind when I discuss some of these other effects of palmitoleic acid. It protects the beta cells of the pancreas. Now, the beta cells of the pancreas are where insulin is produced. Type 1 diabetes is caused by a autoimmune reaction, which causes the body to send immune cells in and destroy the beta cells of the pancreas. And because of that, people with type 1 diabetes cannot produce insulin, and they have to take insulin the rest of their lives. There was a Mr. America who had type 1 diabetes. That was Tim Belknap, who I think won the title, I can't remember what year he won. I think it was 1981. He was a type 1 diabetic who, by the way, he had to take insulin, because his body didn't make any. But he once told me that when I told him one day, long after he retired, I mentioned how insulin was becoming a trend in bodybuilding. A lot of bodybuilders were starting to use insulin, and he couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe it. He says, I would do anything I can to get off insulin, and these guys are taking insulin without having diabetes. He thought they were nuts, but that's just a side story. Now, the thing is that palmitoleic acid, if you give it to rats or lab animals, it actually protects the beta cells against the destruction of the beta cells by saturated fats like palmitic acid. Now, that's a little known fact. Large amounts of saturated fats actually can cause harm to the cells in your pancreas that produce insulin, and this could actually result in insulin insensitivity and possibly even type 2 diabetes. So, all these people that say that, all right, saturated fat, it doesn't cause cardiovascular disease and blah, blah, blah. It's not nearly as dangerous as people think. Well, it's like the old saying, only the dose determines the poison. And large amounts of saturated fatty acids are not healthy at all. And this is one example of how that could be. Like I said, large amounts of saturated fatty acids definitely cause harm to the pancreatic cells that produce insulin. Now, palmitoleic PA improves the lipid profile in both mice and humans. In other words, it helps to lower cholesterol and elevated lipids like triglycerides. This, in turn, will help prevent the onset of atherosclerosis and coronary heart disease. And it does slow the progression of atherosclerosis in fat mice or obese mice. Whether it does so in humans, again, that's open to question. That really hasn't been tested. It may or may not. The intake of, one thing you should know is the intake of palmitoleic acid is low in typical high-fat, high-sugar, or what they call Western diets. This high-fat, high-sugar combination, by the way, is more responsible for obesity or the growing trend towards obesity than any other known factor. Because when you eat a high-fat and a high-refined sugar diet, you know, it just increases body fat tremendously, especially if there's a lack of exercise. But even with the exercise, it's still going to increase body fat in just about everybody. Most of the palmitoleic acid in the body reflects the conversion of palmitic acid, that same saturated fat, palmitic acid. It's converted into palmitoleic acid through the actions of an enzyme called SCD1 that I mentioned earlier. On the other hand, inhibiting SCD1 prevents diet-induced obesity, fatty liver, glucose intolerance, and insulin intolerance in rodents. And the good news is that palmitoleic acid, it has like a two-way street there. This enzyme can convert palmitic acid into into PA. Gee, I have trouble pronouncing that one. But on the other hand, if you ingest supplemental PA, it actually blunts the effects of SCD1, which would translate into less obesity, less fatty liver, better glucose tolerance, and better insulin tolerance. Again, this is in rodents. If this translated into humans, this would be a tremendous effect, because what it would mean, it would be a tremendous preventive effect against the onset of obesity. It actually would prevent the incorporation of saturated fat into fat cells, and the type of fat in fat cells is saturated fat. So in other words, if this works in humans, it can actually block the uptake of fat into fat cells. I mean, think about that for a second. That's almost like a cure for obesity. If it works in humans, and what dose would cause this? Unknown. It's never been tested. Now, PA does reduce the synthesis of fat in the body by inhibiting lipogenic genes, which basically control the activity of enzymes that promote fat synthesis in fat cells. In other words, taking this PA stuff lowers the activity of enzymes that promote fat synthesis in fat cells. Again, rodent studies, animal studies, no human proof. PA can promote anti-inflammatory activity through altering the activity of pro-inflammatory substances such as cytokines, prostaglandins, and various other substances, many of which are actually made from fat. It increases PA increases fatty acid oxidation. In other words, it actually helps to burn fat, and as I said, it blocks the adverse effects of saturated fatty acids. These are all tremendous effects. I mean, if this translates into human physiology, this stuff would make fish oil, all the other ones, seem like just baby stuff, seriously. In obese mice, providing PA reduces appetite, and it improves whole body insulin insensitivity in only 10 days. It also enhances glucose uptake into fat by modulating the glucose carrier, GLUT4, and by activating AMPK. AMPK, I'm not going to get into it here, but it's a substance that very important for health, and in muscle it helps to actually helps your muscles oxidize fat. I'm going to have an article in my Applied Metabolics newsletter about how you can manipulate AMPK, but it's very complex, very hard to explain in a video. PA also activates the fat breakdown enzymes ATGL and hormone-sensitive lipase through the action of another substance called PPAR alpha. I know this sounds very technical, but in the very next issue, the May issue of my Applied Metabolics newsletter, I'm going to talk about how all these substances work. In other words, I'm going to explain in simple English the exact process of how your body breaks down fat, which will be very useful to anybody who's trying to lose body fat, because it'll tell you, by knowing how the body actually breaks down fat, it'll tell you what types of diet and what type of supplements actually work in this regard, meaning what substances will help you lose body fat. The primary omega-9 fatty acid, oleic acid, it works better to help oxidize fat and increase insulin sensitivity when PA is present. In other words, PA works synergistically with the main type of fatty acid found in extra virgin olive oil, oleic acid. Together, they kind of like double the tendency to oxidize body fat, especially if you exercise. Again, I'm going to keep emphasizing, these are animal studies. There's no human studies to prove this. This is why I'm doing this video on PA just out of interest, and also because it is available as a food supplement. But I won't write an article on this in my newsletter, my Applied Metabolics newsletter, because what I like to write about in the newsletter is stuff that has human evidence. In other words, I don't rats, rodent, labs, animals. That's all preliminary. That's not solid evidence. I want to write about stuff that is practical and is, and is usable for humans. And this stuff, PA, might be, but right now you can't say that. There's not enough human studies to back it out. In fact, if you look at the flip side, some studies show opposite effects of PA. It's linked to, some studies show it's linked to the progression of fatty liver and coronary heart disease, but these are what they call cohort studies. In other words, there's studies of large populations where, let's say, the people ate macadamia nuts or ingested macadamia oil. So, because of the fact that those particular foods are fairly decent sources of PA, some of these people might have had fatty liver, and they might have had, atherosclerosis. But, there's no cause and effect because these people were obviously eating a lot of other foods. They might have smoked. They might have drank too much. They probably didn't engage in exercise. So there's no cause and effect proof of these negative effects of PA. In fact, as a matter of fact, there was a study of Japanese women where for 3 weeks they gave them macadamia oil, and it led to a significant reduction in total cholesterol, low-density lipoprotein cholesterol, and body weight. And this was a human study. So the early indications are that PA does not induce negative health effects in humans. And there is some human studies that show supplemental forms of PA. And there is one proprietary source right now of PA that's sold. When they gave this to humans, it significantly reduced levels of what they call C-reactive protein. C-reactive protein is a substance that is reflective of systemic inflammation. Systemic inflammation is basically the cornerstone of most degenerative diseases like cardiovascular disease, cancer, Alzheimer's disease. In other words, you want to keep systemic inflammation as low as possible. Exercise is a lot of the benefits, I should say, of exercise come from the fact that it lowers systemic inflammation. And you should also know that as you get past age 40, the levels of systemic inflammation go up. And along with this, you get diseases like cardiovascular disease, cancer, and Alzheimer's. Some of these diseases are always associated with older people. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they have increased systemic inflammation. This relationship of systemic inflammation to aging, sometimes it's called inflammaging. Inflammaging is that's what they call it. And again, I'm going to have a huge article in my Applied Metabolics newsletter explaining how this happens. I'm talking about inflammaging and things you could do to prevent this. And it will happen to anyone over 40 unless you take preemptive measures to do something about it. And it's very insidious because you don't feel it happening, but it's slowly destroying you inwardly. In other words, it's causing a lot of destruction in your body that you don't feel. Anyway, this PA stuff, it lowers C-reactive protein, which is indication that it might help control systemic inflammation. That was a human study. So right now we could say that the one known thing about palmitic acid, based on the few human studies that have been done, is that it seems to help lower elevated blood lipids like cholesterol, triglycerides, and it does help to lower systemic inflammation. As to the right dose, the study of the human study I just mentioned, you used a dose of 210 milligrams of palmitic acid. It was given in a proprietary supplement called Provinol, P-R-O-V-I-N-A-L. I'm not trying to sell this stuff, but that's what if you ever do want to try this PA stuff, that's what it's available. Several companies sell it under their own brand, but the proprietary name is Provinol. And as I said, if you take it, I can't promise you any of these benefits because there just isn't enough human studies to back it up. But on the other hand, in the animal studies, PA does have an interesting effect. It switches metabolism from storing energy to burning energy through the activation of that same EAMPK, and that would have a tremendous effect on helping to lower body fat. So what can we say about palmitoleic acid other than that it's hard to pronounce? And also that Bruno didn't want to talk about it. And I think it was because he knew that most of the studies were animal studies, and he doesn't want to even get involved. He has a little bit of a prejudice towards animal studies. He only accepts human studies. But anyway, what we could say about it is that it shows tremendous promise. It might be a very useful supplement, but it really needs a lot more human studies before we could conclusively say that this stuff is useful as a supplement. So you can try it, see if it, you could see if it helps you in any way. But again, I couldn't promise any real benefits from this stuff right now. So that's it for palmitoleic acid, Omega-7. Now you know of another fat that you probably never heard of. If you want more information about nutrition, supplements, exercise science, hormonal therapy, ergogenic aids, fat loss techniques that do work, that definitely work, anti-aging research, subscribe today to my Applied Metabolics newsletter, www.appliedmetabolics.com. 40 to 50 pages every month, solid evidence-based information. As I said, I try not to discuss animal studies or studies that have weak evidence. Everything I have in that newsletter is practical and ready to use. And this newsletter incorporates my 56 years of constant and continuing study as well as empirical experience. And what I mean by that is the experience of having trained all that time. I've learned what works and doesn't work for most people, besides myself, most people. And I could steer you in the right direction as far as training and diet and nutrition. You're not going to get this information on any website. You're not going to get it on any science blog or anything like that. It's only in my Applied Metabolics newsletter, www.appliedmetabolics.com. Subscribe today. Those who subscribe, I will answer questions submitted through the Applied Metabolics email porthole on the site. Only subscribers I will respond to. And if you do subscribe, I will enroll you in my private Applied Metabolics Facebook page, where each day I post additional studies and information related to nutrition, exercise, and general health that you will find very, very interesting. I mean, up to the minute information. And I also answer questions in the Facebook page. So if you want to have the best friend you ever have, go to your local shelter and adopt a dog. And that is real. and I could definitely verify that. Dogs are the best. No offense to cats. Take care.